If you have been missing croissants because you have switched over to freshly milled wheat and you want to make croissants with 100% freshly milled wheat to achieve all of those beautiful layers, to make wonderful egg and cheese croissant sandwiches like you see here with your cup of coffee in the morning, well then stay tuned, my friends, because this video is for you. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel we talk all things about real whole grains from a biblical perspective. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're old, welcome back. So I'm really excited about this video because this is the final recipe for the 2023 Make Bread 365 challenge. So if you've been following along, we made it. And if you did all the recipes, definitely comment below to let me know how the challenge went. And also stay tuned because next week I'm going live to talk about a new challenge that is coming up for 2024. You're not going to want to miss it. So before we get to this recipe, many thanks to Mackenzie from Little Farm Folk who started this challenge at the beginning of the year to begin with, all about not buying bread from the store and challenging ourselves. So if you want to catch up with past recipes, you just need to go to grainsandgrit.com/makebread365 to check out all the great recipes that we have done throughout this year. And this one is croissants, the one that I've kind of been dreading all year because I was so intimidated by it. And while it does seem intimidating, I will say the process is not difficult, but there are a lot of little steps that you need to do, and detail does matter. But yes, you can make delicious croissants with 100% freshly milled wheat, and that's what we're going to do. So do know that the wheat that we have, that I am using in this recipe, is hard white wheat, which is what I recommend. I don't recommend a hard red, mainly because of the flavor. We're wanting a mild flavor, and a hard white, this is a yeast bread, and it just does really well in this recipe. Also, you can grab the recipe. That's a free printable recipe, grainsandgrit.com/croissants. The link is below, or just follow the link on the screen. And the biggest thing with this is I would actually watch this video with the recipe in hand because it's kind of a companion to the recipe. But without further ado, let's get to it. So first of all, this is the Nutrimel Artiste mixer. I add my 4 cups of freshly milled hard white wheat flour. And to that, I add the 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of instant yeast is what I like to use. And then here are 4 tablespoons of butter cut up. And then we're going to give this a good mix. I'm just using the dough hook. And then on a slow speed, as you see here, I slowly start adding in the milk. This is 1.5 cups of cold whole milk. The cold does matter because you don't want to melt that butter. And then we're just going to get this stirred in and really start incorporating it. I like to add half of the milk first, let that start mixing together well, and then as you can see here, we slowly start adding the rest of the milk. And while this is going, let us pause here for a minute to talk about why I don't weigh ingredients. People might be asking, why don't I weigh, especially with what you're about to see that happens. I have another video for that. So when I say 4 cups of flour, I do mean the actual flour. 1.5 cups of milk, that's what we add in first. And as you can see, it already started almost immediately starting to form a ball of dough, which is good. That's where we want to be. But we are going to be kneading this for 5 minutes. But this is not a start kneading and walk away. So here's what we're looking at. It's kind of like it stays together pretty well. But now we're going to do this for a total of 5 minutes. But we are going to be watching this. So I'm actually going to be checking on this as we go about halfway through, because as you see, this is sped up, but as you're about to see, it's actually crazy enough starting to now adhere to the side of the bowl where it was coming off the sides of the bowl. Now it's starting to adhere. And I think that's because the butter softening and things like this. And this is where we start determining if we're going to add some more flour. I'm not adding it just yet. I'm going to be waiting until about halfway through. So here we are about halfway through this 5-minute kneading time. And you can see it is really adhering to the sides of the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding just a little bit of flour at a time. This is only about like 1 tablespoon right now. Let it mix in. And then also to just be sure, I actually stopped it and scraped down the sides to make sure everything is coming together. I still found that it needed a little bit more because I am start wanting to watch to see when it does actually start to pull away from the bowl again. So again, this is all sped up, but as you can see here, you can start seeing it to pull off the sides. And I stopped adding flour because it's going to pull together even more for the rest of this kneading time. So that's what you're looking for. So at first, when you add the flour and the milk, it comes together as a ball of dough. When you start that kneading process, it then reverses and starts adhering to the side of the bowl. And then you just start adding in like 1 tablespoon, if even that, of flour at a time until you just start seeing it pull away from the sides of the bowl. And as you can see right at the end of this 5-minute mark, it is now pulling off the sides of the bowl absolutely beautifully into a dough. And this is a nice soft dough. It's kind of like a Play-Doh, not a typical bread dough. It is pulling apart. It is a bit tacky. We're going for tacky, not crazy sticky, and that's okay. Here I'm grabbing one of those really cool pastry mats I got from Pampered Chef, and we're just going to lightly flour this surface. And the first step is easy because we're just going to take this and form it into just a ball of dough. Don't stress out about this. There's a lot of resting time in here. So right now, don't worry if it's not like a super crazy soft dough like you would think. That's okay. So we're going to cover this with plastic wrap. We're going to put on a tray, and then I just like to cover it up with a towel just to be safe. And then in the fridge for 30 minutes. And then after those 30 minutes, we're going to bring it out. And this is where you use a tool that you don't think you would need in the kitchen, a measuring tape. And so, because we do need to measure these out exactly. So we're going to lightly flour the surface here. And then we're going to roll this out. We're going to be rolling it out into a 14 by 10 inch rectangle. The dough is going to be like a Play-Doh. It should still be workable just after 30 minutes in the fridge. So you're going to want to check this periodically with your tape measure. I find that getting the width is easier, and then I work on the length. So you'll figure this out. But the bottom line is you do want a rectangle. It tends to make an oval shape. So as you see here with my hands, I'm kind of working it where I'm getting those more of a crisp edge, more of like more of a corner. Like we want a true rectangle size. This does matter in the future. But again, this one is coming out to a 14 by 10 inch rectangle. Now just cover this up with plastic wrap, and we're going to place this in the fridge for a minimum of 4 hours. 35 minutes before it's done, we're going to want to beat in our butter mixture as we see here. And then we actually have to roll this out into a 7 by 10 inch rectangle. So this is kind of a hack I do. This is one of those self-healing mats I use for quilting. And so I just like to take parchment paper, turn it over, place it on top of this, and then I just draw out a 7 inch by 10 inch rectangle. Makes it very easy. You can use your ruler if you want. And then that way I just have to then flip it over, and I can easily spread out all of this softened butter without me constantly having to actually use a ruler or measuring tape to measure it. So however you want to do this, we do need this butter to measure out to a 7 by 10 inch rectangle. So we're just going to smooth this out, have it pretty much as even as possible. But again, this is where your measurements do matter. You do want to get this right. And then once we get it to our nice little 7 by 10 rectangle, we then are going to place this in the fridge on another baking sheet for 30 minutes. And this will be coming out with our dough in about 30 minutes. You don't want this to be longer than 30 minutes because it may be a little bit hard to roll out, as you will see in a bit. All right, it's been 4 hours since this dough has been resting in the fridge, and now we do the wonderful process of lamination. So you now want to take your butter that's now fairly hardened and place it in the center of this rectangle as you see here. And then we fold over like a third of it over and then the other third of it over. As you can see here, the dough isn't quite matching up for me, so that's okay. We can fix it. So I just start pinching and molding and shaping the dough together to fully cover up this butter, and we're mashing all the seams together, making sure it's all kind of nice and neat. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but bottom line is we want to make sure that the butter is covered. And then now we're going to lightly flour our surface, and then we got to roll this bad boy out. Tape measure again. This is now being rolled out to a 10 by 20 inch rectangle. You will be using some muscle for this, but again, make sure that it's exact. It's going to want to oval out again. Just keep those corners. We want a nice looking rectangle here. And again, I find that getting the width first, that 10 inches first, and then working on the 20 inches seems to work easier for me. And then we're going to fold it like an envelope. So 1/3 over and the other third over that. And that is our first lamination. And now we're going to lightly flour it again. We're going to rotate it. And now we're going to do this process again. So now we just need another 10 by 20 inch rectangle. So it just use the same process as before. If it's starting to kind of be like melty and sticky and things, put it back in the fridge for about 30 minutes and then get back to it. But here we are. And then we're going to just fold it over again into thirds. This is our second fold. And now we just cover this up with plastic wrap and put this back in the fridge for 30 minutes. And now it's been 30 minutes rest. And oh, look, we're going to do this process all over again. And so once again, we're just forming another 10 by 20 inch rectangle. The reason for this is what creates all of those amazing, beautiful layers with the butter and the dough, the butter and the dough. This is what does it. This is a lamination process. It is long, but now we're going to put this back in the fridge for 4 hours or up to overnight. All right, it's the next day for me. The dough has risen a bit. This is coming out, and now we're going to take this, and we need another rectangle, but this one is actually an 8 inch by 20 inch rectangle. So just roll it out as before. I did find this time, because it's been in the fridge even longer, that it takes a bit more muscle to do this, and that is completely normal. And now we're going to cut this in half. So I like to measure this at the 4-inch mark on each side, and then just use a pizza cutter and just cut all the way down to get 2 long skinny ones. And then I just do this again for every 5 inches, because now we're needing to measure out 8 4 by 5 inch rectangles. So I just mark them and then just cut them again with a pizza cutter. And then we're just going to take our rectangles and then cut them in half into all of these little triangle shapes. And can we just take a moment to admire this beautiful lamination going on, all of these layers here with the bread and the dough? Awesome. So now we're just going to take these triangles and carefully with a small rolling pin, measure them out to about 8 inches. Now I will say here, this is just going to take some practice, but we like to cut a little slit at the top and roll them up, kind of mush that tip in to kind of keep it down as it rises. Try to form it into a crescent shape. It all depends on how big it is, and then place on a pan. And then now we're going to do all of these triangles. Mine do not look absolutely picture perfect. This is just going to take a lot of practice to get it done. And you'll start figuring it out which points matter. So the top 2 points of those triangles, you want to be as pointy as possible to help you get a length long enough to actually curve into a crescent. This may not make much sense right now, but as you do this, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But once we get them all done, ta-da! Here they are. It's going to take forever, it seems like. But now we're just going to cover this up and let them rise. And while they're rising for about an hour or so or resting, we're going to do our egg wash. And then here they are. They have risen quite well, and they'll rise even more in the oven. But you want to rise these for at least an hour while you're preheating your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to place them in the oven for 400 degrees, rotating halfway through. And here they are after just 20 minutes. They are beautiful, nicely brown on top. And look at all the layers. Oh, it's such a wonderful feeling when you pull this out of the oven and to see how amazing they look. But these are so good. You just want to let them rest for a little bit. But this is a bread that we can have hot. And here's just another angle, because I just want to admire all the pretty layers that we worked so hard for. And here's on the inside. With it being so hot, you can't really see them, but Enjoy, my friends. So there you have it, y'all. I am so excited. This is such a delicious recipe. The only sad thing about it is that since it takes so much time and it is devoured like that in my family. So if you're wanting to know about freezing instructions, make ahead instructions, those are all in the printable recipe. And then again, just be sure to check out grainsandgrit.com/makebread365 to catch up on past challenges or past recipes for this year if you haven't done them all. And then stay tuned for next week where I'm going live on Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk to y'all about the next challenge that I am actually doing for 2024. So as always, thank y'all so very much for watching. I hope y'all enjoy this recipe. If you post it to social media, use the hashtag MakeBread365 and also tag me as well. And as always, I will see y'all next week. Bye.